Natasha Reed stared at the bedroom door, her hands trembling as she gripped her purse. The sounds coming from inside were unmistakable. Laughter, moans, the rhythmic creaking of bed springs. For 3 seconds, she convinced herself she was wrong. Maybe Derek was watching something on his laptop. Maybe he had the television volume up too high. But deep down, she knew. When she pushed open the door to the apartment she shared with her boyfriend of 2 years, the scene before her shattered what remained of her fragile hope. Derek was tangled in the sheets with Jessica, her roommate and supposed best friend since college. They were so absorbed in each other that they did not notice her standing there, frozen in the doorway. Jessica's blonde hair was spread across the pillow that Natasha had bought just last month. Derek's hands were gripping Jessica's waist with a passion he had not shown Natasha in months. The betrayal hit her like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. "You have got to be kidding me," Natasha heard herself say, her voice sounding distant and strange. Both heads snapped toward her. Derek scrambled away from Jessica so quickly he nearly fell off the bed. Jessica sat up, pulling the sheet around herself with theatrical modesty that made Natasha want to scream. Da-da-da. "Wait, I can explain," Derek started, his face flushing red as he grabbed a pillow to cover himself. "Explain what exactly?" Natasha asked, surprised by how steady her voice sounded despite the trembling in her entire body. "How you are sleeping with my roommate in our bed." Jessica had the audacity to sigh, as if Natasha was being unreasonable. "Honestly, Nat, this is not as bad as it looks. It just happened. Derek and I have been talking a lot lately, and we realized we have this connection." "Connection," Natasha repeated flatly. "In my bed." "You have been so busy with work," Derek interjected, standing up and wrapping the sheet around his waist. "We barely see each other anymore." Jessica was just there to listen, and things developed naturally. The rage that had been building in Natasha's chest suddenly crystallized into something cold and clear. She looked at both of them, really looked at them, and realized she felt nothing but disgust. "You know what? You two deserve each other," she said quietly. "Jessica, you can have him. Derek, you can have someone who thinks cheating is something that just happens naturally. I am done." She turned and walked out before either of them could respond. Behind her, she heard Derek calling her name, but she did not look back. She grabbed her keys from the bowl by the door and left the apartment, letting the door slam behind her with satisfying finality. In her car, Natasha sat for a long moment, staring at the steering wheel as the reality of what just happened washed over her. 2 years with Derek, gone. 5 years of friendship with Jessica, revealed as a lie. She felt hollow, like someone had scooped out her insides and left only an empty shell. She needed a drink. She needed to not think. She needed to be anywhere but here. Natasha drove through the city without a destination, letting instinct guide her until she found herself in the downtown district. A small bar with a neon sign reading "The Velvet Room" caught her attention. It looked quiet, intimate, the kind of place where you could disappear into the shadows. Inside, the bar was dimly lit with deep red walls and soft jazz playing in the background. A handful of people sat scattered around small tables, everyone lost in their own worlds. Perfect. Natasha made her way to the bar and slid onto a leather stool. The bartender, an older man with kind eyes, approached with a knowing smile. "Rough day?" he asked. "Rough year?" Natasha corrected. "Tequila, please." "Make it a double." Poured the drink without comment, and Natasha downed it in one burning gulp. The alcohol scorched her throat, but the pain was welcome. It was different from the ache in her chest. "Another," she said, pushing the glass forward. "Easy there," a deep voice said from beside her. "At that pace, you will be singing karaoke on the bar in an hour." Natasha turned to find a man sitting 2 stools away. He was striking, with dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead. Sharp cheekbones and eyes so intensely blue they seemed to glow in the dim lighting. He wore a charcoal gray shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms. A slight smile played at the corners of his mouth. "And what if that is exactly my plan?" Natasha challenged, grateful for the distraction from her spiraling thoughts. The stranger laughed, a rich sound that made something warm unfurl in her stomach. "Then who am I to stand in the way of artistic expression? But maybe pace yourself. The night is young." He moved to the stool next to her, bringing his own glass of amber liquid. Up close, he was even more attractive, with a kind of presence that filled a space without trying. "Bad breakup?" he guessed, nodding at the bartender for another round for both of them. "Is it that obvious?" Natasha asked with a bitter laugh. "I recognize the look," he said, "that specific combination of anger, hurt, and determination to forget. I wore it myself not long ago." Something about his honesty made Natasha's defenses crack. "Caught my boyfriend in bed with my roommate," she heard herself confess. 2 years down the drain, the stranger winced. That is brutal. The roommate part elevates it to a whole new level of betrayal, all right? Natasha said, feeling validated. Like, pick someone I do not live with at least. Show some basic consideration for logistics. He laughed again, and Natasha found herself smiling despite everything. I am Damien, he said, extending his hand. Natasha, she replied, shaking it. His grip was firm and warm, sending an unexpected jolt up her arm. Well, Natasha, here's what I know, Damien said, his blue eyes serious. Anyone who cheats on you is an idiot. And anyone who betrays a friendship like that is not worth your tears or your tequila money. You sound very certain about that for someone who just met me, Natasha observed, taking a slower sip of her fresh drink. Call it instinct, Damien said. I am good at reading people, and you have good person written all over you. The kind who puts others first, who tries to see the best in people, who probably made 1,000 excuses for behavior you knew was wrong. Natasha felt her throat tighten because he was right. She had noticed Derek pulling away for months. He had seen the way he and Jessica laughed together, had felt the distance growing. But she had told herself she was being paranoid, insecure, unreasonable. That obvious too? She asked quietly. Only because I have been there, Damien admitted. Different details, same story. Someone I trusted, someone I loved, turned out to be someone completely different. They fell into easy conversation after that, trading stories and insights like old friends. Damien was funny, intelligent, and surprisingly deep. He worked in the creative industry, had traveled extensively, had opinions about everything from architecture to the best pizza in the city. Natasha found herself laughing more than she had in months. The pain of Derek's betrayal fading into background noise. Hours passed without notice. The bar gradually emptied until it was just them and a few other late-night patrons. The bartender kept their glasses filled while giving them space, and somewhere between the third and fourth drink, somewhere between a story about Damien's disastrous attempt at surfing and Natasha's confession about her secret love of terrible reality television, the energy between them shifted. It became charged, electric, full of unspoken possibility. I should probably go, Natasha said, but she did not move from her stool. Probably, Damien agreed. But he leaned closer instead of pulling away. This is crazy, she whispered as his hand came to rest on her knee. The touch, gentle but deliberate. Absolutely insane, he murmured. His eyes locked on hers. Want to do something crazy together? Natasha knew she should say no. She should go home, process her breakup, be responsible and sensible. But Derek had chosen Jessica. Her supposed best friend had betrayed her. And sitting in front of her was this incredible man who made her feel alive, desired, and fearless. Yes, she breathed. Damien paid their tab and led her outside into the cool night air. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining naturally. They walked 2 blocks to a boutique hotel, kind with elegant, understated signage and a lobby that smelled of expensive candles. In the elevator, they stood close, but did not touch, the anticipation building with each ascending floor. When the doors opened, Damien led her down a quiet hallway to a room overlooking the city lights. The door closed behind them, and suddenly they were kissing with an urgency that surprised them both. Natasha's hands tangled in Damien's dark hair while his arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against him. Every touch felt electric, every kiss deeper than the last. Are you sure? Damien asked, pulling back to search her face. Completely, Natasha answered and meant it. What followed was the most intense night of Natasha's life. Damien was attentive, passionate, and generous in ways that made her forget Derek ever existed. They explored each other with curiosity and care, laughing at awkward moments and gasping at perfect ones. When they finally collapsed together in the early morning hours, Natasha felt thoroughly satisfied and surprisingly at peace. She woke as dawn light filtered through the curtains. Damien was asleep beside her, one arm draped across her waist, his face peaceful in rest. He looked younger like this, vulnerable. Natasha felt a pang of something tender that scared her. This was supposed to be one night, beautiful distraction from her pain. Getting attached would only complicate things. Carefully, she extracted herself from his embrace and gathered her scattered clothes from around the room. She dressed quietly, searching for her shoes and purse. As she was about to leave, she noticed her red lace panties on the floor near the bed. On impulse, she picked them up and placed them on the pillow beside Damien's head with a small smile. A memento of their perfect night. Then Natasha Reed slipped out of the hotel room and back into her regular life, certain she would never see the mysterious Damien again. She had no idea how wrong she was. Monday morning arrived with cruel efficiency. Natasha had spent the weekend moving her belongings out of the apartment she'd shared with Jessica and into a smaller studio across town. Derek had called 17 times. She blocked his number after the 5th voicemail. Jessica sent a single text that read, "We need to talk." Natasha deleted, without responding. The only thing that made her smile during those difficult days was the memory of that night with Damien. The mysterious stranger who had made her feel beautiful, desired, and powerful when she needed it most. She wondered about him sometimes, imagined running into him at a coffee shop or bookstore. But the city was huge, and lightning rarely struck twice. Sterling and Associates occupied 3 floors of a downtown high-rise. Natasha had worked there for 4 years, steadily climbing from junior copywriter to marketing specialist. She loved her job, loved the creative challenges and the team dynamic. Today, however, she felt anxious. The company had been searching for a new creative director for months. The announcement email said the decision had finally been made. "Big day," her coworker Rachel commented as Natasha settled at her desk with coffee. "Everyone is buzzing about the new director. Apparently he is some hotshot from New York who revolutionized digital marketing at his last company. Hopefully he is not one of those nightmare bosses who thinks screaming equals leadership," Natasha replied, booting up her computer. "From your lips to the universe's ears," Rachel laughed. "Meeting is at 10. Mandatory attendance for all creative staff." The morning crawled by. Natasha tried to focus on her current campaign for a local restaurant chain, but her mind kept wandering. She checked her phone obsessively, half hoping Damien had somehow found her social media and reached out. Ridiculous, she knew. They had not exchanged last names or numbers. It had been meant as one perfect night, nothing more. At 9:50. She made her way to the large conference room on the 20th floor. Her colleagues filtered in, chatting nervously. Rachel saved her a seat near the middle of the table. Through the glass walls, Natasha could see the executive team gathering outside. Then she saw him. Time stopped. Damien walked down the hallway. With the company president listening intently to something being explained to him, he wore a perfectly tailored navy suit that emphasized his broad shoulders. His dark hair was styled professionally, and he carried a leather portfolio under one arm. He looked polished, powerful, and devastatingly handsome, and he was walking straight toward their conference room. "Oh no," Natasha whispered, feeling the blood drain from her face. "What?" Rachel asked, concerned. "You okay? You look like you were about to pass out." "That is him," Natasha managed to say, unable to tear her eyes away. "That is the guy." "What guy?" "The guy from the bar." "The hotel. The night, that guy." Rachel's eyes widened to the size of dinner plates. "You slept with our new creative director?" "I did not know he was our creative director," Natasha hissed. "I did not know anything about him except his first name." The door opened. The president, Thomas Sterling, entered with Damien behind him. Every conversation in the room died instantly. "Good morning, everyone," Thomas said with practiced cheer. "I'm thrilled to introduce Sterling and Associates' new creative director, Damien Cross. Damien comes to us from Vanguard Media in New York, where he increased client retention by 40% and won multiple industry awards. We are incredibly lucky to have him." Damien smiled professionally at the room, his eyes scanning the faces. When his gaze landed on Natasha, she saw the exact moment recognition hit. His smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly. Then his professional mask slid back into place so smoothly that anyone not watching closely would have missed it. But Natasha was watching very closely. From the slight quirk of his lips, she knew he was thinking about those red lace panties she had left on his pillow. "Thank you, Thomas," Damien said, his voice smooth and confident. "I am excited to be here and to work with such a talented team. I have reviewed some of your recent campaigns, and I am impressed by the creativity and strategic thinking. My goal is to support your growth while pushing us all to think bigger and bolder." He continued talking about his vision and expectations, but Natasha barely heard the words. Her heart hammered against her ribs, her palms were sweating. This could not be happening. Of all the companies in this massive city, of all the jobs he could have taken, Damien Cross was now her boss. "Any questions?" Damien asked, finally tearing. His gaze away from Natasha to look at the rest of the team. Several hands went up. He answered thoughtfully, demonstrating both expertise and approachability. He was good at this, Natasha realized. Natural leadership radiated from him. When the meeting ended, people clustered around Damien to introduce themselves. Natasha tried to slip out quietly, but his voice stopped her. Natasha read. "Correct?" he called out, reading from a list. "Could you stay for a moment? I would like to discuss the restaurant campaign you are leading." Rachel squeezed her arm supportively as she passed. Then the room emptied, and Natasha was alone with Damien Cross. He waited until the door closed before speaking. "So," he said, leaning against the conference table with his arms crossed. "This is unexpected." "That is an understatement," Natasha replied, staying near the door in case she needed to flee. You are my boss. And you left your underwear on my pillow? Damien countered, that familiar playful smile tugging at his lips. Red lace, if I recall correctly. Very memorable. Natasha felt her face burn. I was making a spontaneous gesture. I did not know I would ever see you again, let alone work for you. For the record, Damien said, his expression turning serious, I did not know you worked here either. When Thomas offered me the position, he mentioned the company name, but not the specific team members. This morning was as much a shock for me as it was for you. What do we do? Natasha asked quietly. This is complicated. There are probably rules about this sort of thing. Damien ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized from their night together. There are rules about relationships between superiors and subordinates. Yes. But technically, we do not have a relationship. We had one night before I became your supervisor. Nothing happened that violated company policy. Technically, Natasha repeated the word feeling inadequate for the intensity of what they had shared. Look, Damien said, pushing away from the table and taking a step closer. I like you, Natasha. That night was incredible. But I also respect you and your career. Das. If you want to pretend it never happened, maintain complete professionalism. I will follow your lead. Your comfort matters more than my feelings. Kindness in his words made Natasha's throat tight. I liked that night too, she admitted. You made me feel things I had not felt in years. But you are right. This is complicated. I have worked hard to build my reputation here. I cannot have people thinking I slept my way into opportunities. Then we keep our distance, Damien agreed, though something sad flickered in his blue eyes. Strictly professional. I can transfer oversight of your projects to my deputy director if that would make you more comfortable. No, Natasha said quickly. That would raise more questions. We just act normal, like colleagues who are meeting for the first time. Colleagues who are meeting for the first time, Damien repeated. I can do that. He extended his hand formally. Nice to meet you, Natasha Reed. I look forward to working with you. She shook his hand, ignoring the familiar spark that his touch created. Nice to meet you too, Mr. Cross. Over the following weeks, they maintained their professional distance with painful precision. In meetings, Damien treated Natasha no differently than any other team member. He offered constructive feedback, approved her ideas, and occasionally challenged her to think deeper. He was an excellent creative director, the kind who inspired rather than intimidated, but sometimes Natasha would catch him watching her when he thought no one was looking. And sometimes their hands would accidentally brush when passing documents. The connection between them flared like a living thing. It was torture. Then Jessica appeared. Natasha had not realized her former roommate worked at Sterling and Associates. Jessica was in human resources on a different floor, and their paths had never crossed during work hours. But 2 weeks after Damien's arrival, Natasha spotted the familiar blonde hair in the cafeteria. Jessica saw her at the same moment. For a second, guilt flashed across her pretty face. Then it hardened into defensive hostility. Natasha, she said, approaching with her lunch tray. We should talk. We really should not, Natasha replied, focusing intently on her salad. I want to apologize, Jessica continued, sitting down uninvited. What happened with Derek was wrong. I feel terrible. You feel terrible, Natasha repeated flatly. How nice for you. I felt terrible when I walked in on you in my bed. So I guess we both feel terrible. Conversation over. Jessica's expression shifted from apologetic to annoyed. You do not have to be so dramatic about it. These things happen. Derek and I have real feelings for each other, and I hope you will be very happy together, Natasha said, standing up to leave. Just stay away from me. Duh. But Jessica did not stay away. Over the next few days, Natasha noticed her former friend watching her around the office. Then rumors started circulating. Rachel mentioned it first. Hey, weird question, but are you dating the new creative director? Natasha nearly choked on her coffee. What? No. Why would you think that? Someone from HR has been telling people you to have a relationship. That you knew him before he got hired. That maybe you helped him get the job. The implication was clear and infuriating. That is completely false. I met Mr. Cross for the first time at the staff meeting, same as everyone else. Technically true, if you ignored the night at the Velvet Room and the boutique hotel. But the damage was done. People started watching Natasha and Damien in meetings, looking for signs of favoritism or inappropriate behavior. Natasha felt paranoid and angry. She knew exactly who had started the rumors and why. Jessica was punishing her for not accepting the apology, for not making the betrayal easier to digest. When Damien called Natasha into his office Friday afternoon, she went with reluctance and dread. Close the door, he said, his expression unreadable. She obeyed, stomach twisting with anxiety. Damien waited until she sat before speaking. I have been hearing rumors about us. About our relationship, or supposed relationship? They are not true, Natasha said immediately. I have not said anything to anyone about what happened before you started here. I know, Damien replied. But someone is spreading stories. Do you know who? Natasha hesitated. Admitting the truth meant explaining her complicated history with Jessica, which meant revealing more of her personal life than she wanted. But Damien deserved to know what he was dealing with. My ex-roommate works in HR, she finally said. Jessica Miller. She is the one I caught with my boyfriend. She has been trying to apologize, and when I refused to accept it, she started spreading rumors. I think she is angry that I will not make her betrayal easier for her to live with. Damien's jaw tightened. This is workplace harassment. She cannot use company channels to spread false information that damages your professional reputation. What can we do? Natasha asked. If we make a big deal out of it, people will assume the rumors are true. Let me handle it, Damien said. Quietly. Trust me. Natasha wanted to trust him. But trusting people had not worked out well for her lately. Jessica's campaign against Natasha escalated over the next week. Small things at first. Natasha's ideas and meetings were met with skeptical looks. The coffee machine near her desk mysteriously broke. Her computer files were accidentally corrupted, costing her hours of work. Then came the bigger problems. A client presentation that Natasha had been preparing for weeks was mysteriously scheduled at a time when she had a conflicting dental appointment she had booked months ago. When she tried to reschedule the dental work, the receptionist informed her that someone from her office had already confirmed the appointment that morning. Someone from HR. Specifically. This is getting out of hand, Rachel said, helping Natasha rebuild her presentation on the morning it was due. You need to tell someone. Tell Damien. I cannot keep running to the creative director every time something goes wrong, Natasha protested. It makes me look incompetent. It makes you look targeted, Rachel corrected. Because you are being targeted. Jessica is abusing her HR access to sabotage you. The presentation went poorly, despite Natasha's best efforts. The client seemed confused by inconsistencies in the materials, details that Natasha knew she had gotten right. Afterward, she discovered that Jessica had accessed the shared drive and made subtle changes to the numbers and demographics. Small enough to seem like honest mistakes, but devastating to the presentation's credibility. Damien found her in her office afterward. Door closed, head in her hands. Hey, he said softly, knocking despite the door being open. Can I come in? Natasha nodded, too exhausted to maintain pretenses. He entered and closed the door behind him, then did something unexpected. He sat in the chair across from her desk rather than towering over her, making himself less intimidating. The presentation was sabotaged, he said. It was not a question. The files were changed, Natasha confirmed. Details I know were correct, but I cannot prove it was deliberate versus my own mistakes. Yes, you can, Damien said. The shared drive keeps revision histories. Every change is logged with a timestamp and user ID. I already checked. Jessica Miller accessed your presentation files at 2 a.m. yesterday and made 17 changes. You checked? I've been checking everything, Damien admitted. After you told me about her, I asked IT to flag any unusual access patterns involving your files. She has been in your documents, your emails, even your calendar. She has been systematically undermining you for weeks. Relief and anger warred in Natasha's chest. Why would she do this? I was not the one who broke our friendship. She was. People who do terrible things often punish their victims for making them feel guilty, Damien said quietly. She wants you to be the villain so she does not have to be. What do we do? We stop her, Damien said, his voice hardening. I have been building a case with HR and legal. Jessica has violated multiple company policies regarding data access, privacy, and workplace harassment. But I wanted to talk to you first, before taking action. This affects your reputation and career. You should have a say in how we handle it. The kindness in his consideration made Natasha want to cry. I want it to stop, she said firmly. But I do not want special treatment because we have history. It has to be handled properly. It will be, Damien promised. Thomas is calling a company-wide meeting Monday morning. Jessica will be held accountable publicly. Not for revenge, but because this kind of behavior affects everyone. People need to know that Sterling & Associates does not tolerate workplace harassment or abuse of power. Monday morning, the entire company gathered in the largest conference room. Natasha sat with Rachel, her palms sweating despite knowing what was coming. Thomas Sterling stood at the front, his expression serious. Beside him stood Damien and Patricia Chen, the head of human resources. Thank you all for coming, Thomas began. We have a serious matter to address. Over the past month, an employee has been abusing their position and access to harm a colleague. This behavior violates our core values and multiple company policies. The room erupted in whispers. Natasha felt eyes turning toward her, curious and sympathetic. Jessica Miller, Patricia said, her voice sharp. Please stand. Across the room, Jessica rose slowly, her face pale. She looked at Natasha with pure hatred. Evidence shows you have accessed confidential files without authorization, sabotaged work materials, spread false rumors, and created a hostile work environment for a fellow employee, Patricia continued. These actions constitute serious breaches of conduct. Your employment with Sterling and Associates is terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Jessica's face went from white to red. This is ridiculous, she protested loudly. I did not do anything wrong. She is making things up because I am dating her ex-boyfriend. This is personal. The revision logs are personal, Damien asked, his voice calm but cutting. The access records showing you in files you had no business viewing? The testimony from 3 colleagues who heard you spreading rumors? All personal, Jessica faltered, realizing she had no defense. And for the record, Damien continued, addressing the entire room, I want to make something clear. Natasha Reed has conducted herself with complete professionalism throughout this situation. She did not report the harassment immediately because she was trying to handle it quietly and not cause drama. That kind of grace under pressure is exactly what we value here. His eyes met Natasha's across the room, warm and supportive. Security arrived and escorted a protesting Jessica out. The room remained silent until the doors closed behind her.
Oh.
Let this be clear, Thomas said. We take workplace harassment seriously. If you experience or witness anything similar, report it immediately. We will always investigate and take appropriate action. The meeting dispersed slowly, with many people stopping to speak to Natasha. Colleagues she barely knew expressed support. Rachel hugged her tightly. The weight that had been pressing on Natasha's chest for weeks finally lifted. As the crowd thinned, Damien approached. My office, he asked quietly. We should talk. In his office with the door closed, the professional distance they had maintained for weeks finally collapsed. Thank you, Natasha said, for believing me, for protecting me, for handling it the right way. Always, Damien replied. Then, more hesitantly, Natasha, I need to be honest about something. That night at the bar was not a random encounter for me. I mean, meeting you was random, but what I felt was not. What do you mean? I mean, I have not been able to stop thinking about you for 6 weeks, he confessed. Every day in meetings, I had to remind myself to stay professional. But the truth is, I want more. I want to take you to dinner. I want to know everything about you. I want to see if what we felt that night could become something real. Natasha's heart raced. The company policy about relationships only applies to direct supervisor-subordinate relationships where there is a power imbalance, Damien interrupted. I spoke with legal. If we disclose the relationship to HR and transfer your projects to my deputy director, we are within policy, but only if you want that. I will not pressure you. Your career and comfort come first. For weeks, Natasha had been telling herself that nothing could happen between them, that the professional complications were too great, that she should not trust her feelings so soon after Derek's betrayal. But looking at Damien now, seeing the vulnerability in his expression and remembering the way he had protected her reputation without being asked, she realized something important. Derek had been easy, safe, boring. He had never challenged her, never surprised her, never made her feel truly alive. Their relationship had been comfortable complacency, not real love. Damien was different. He made her nervous and